England, 1315. The sky no longer brings life, it delivers collapse. Rain falls without mercy, day after day, until golden wheat fields rot into blackened graves. The air reeks of decay rising from drowned soil beneath your feet. You stand there, holding grain that dissolves into ruin in your hands. A single crust of bread now outweighs a human life. You thought hunger would come slowly, but it didn't. It's already here. And the worst part is, you still believe you can survive this. At first, it doesn't feel like the end of the world. It feels like a delay. You tell yourself the rain will stop tomorrow, that the sun will break through, that the harvest is only late, not lost. You walk through the village and see others doing the same calculations in their heads, clinging to routines as if normality itself can hold reality together. The baker still opens his stall. The miller still turns his wheel. And you still believe that if you act wisely, you'll make it through. You begin making careful choices. You ration what little grain you have left, breaking it into smaller portions, convincing yourself that discipline equals survival. You avoid the crowded markets where desperation already hums beneath the surface. You stay dry, you stay cautious, you stay controlled. Because control, that's the illusion you hold on to most tightly. But something is wrong, subtle at first, almost invisible. The bread you eat doesn't taste the same. It carries a bitterness you can't quite explain, a strange heaviness that lingers on your tongue. You ignore it. Hunger doesn't allow for suspicion. Hunger demands obedience. So you swallow it anyway, telling yourself it's better than nothing. And for a moment, it feels like you're winning. You found food. You adapted. You survived another day while others didn't. That quiet sense of victory settles in your chest. Maybe you're smarter than the rest. Maybe you figured it out. But then, you notice the first crack in that belief. A man in the village collapses without warning. Not from starvation, but from something else. His body twists unnaturally, limbs jerking, teeth clenched as if he's fighting an invisible force. People step back, unsure, afraid to touch him. Someone whispers that he's cursed. Another says it's punishment. You feel a flicker of unease because you ate the same bread he did, and suddenly, survival no longer feels like a strategy. It feels like a gamble you don't understand. The rain never stops, and with every passing day, the world beneath your feet changes in ways you cannot see. Deep inside the soaked grain stores, something is growing. Not life, but corruption. A fungus spreads silently through the last reserves of wheat and rye, feeding on moisture, thriving in the cold, damp air. You cannot see it. You cannot smell it clearly. But it is there, waiting, and you eat it. Because you have no choice. The bread becomes darker, denser, slightly misshapen, but still recognizable enough to trust. You break it apart with trembling hands, ignoring the faint discoloration threaded through the grain. Hunger doesn't negotiate. It overrides instinct, overrides doubt, overrides fear, until your body begins to betray you. It starts small, a tingling in your fingers, a strange warmth crawling up your arms. You think it's exhaustion, maybe cold leaving your bones. But then the sensation sharpens, burning, twisting, like something alive is moving beneath your skin. Others begin to show the same signs. A woman screams in the night, claiming her limbs are on fire. A child convulses uncontrollably, eyes wide with terror at things no one else can see. Some laugh hysterically, others collapse into silence, their bodies shutting down piece by piece. No one understands what's happening. There are no microscopes, no knowledge of bacteria, no language for poison hidden inside food itself. Only fear. and explanations that make things worse. People whisper of curses, of divine punishment, of invisible demons crawling through the harvest. And the cruelest part? The very thing keeping you alive is slowly killing you. You try to stop eating it. You really do. But hunger tightens its grip, squeezing logic out of your mind. Because the alternative is worse. Starvation is certain. This at least gives you a chance, or so you tell yourself. But as you watch another body collapse into the mud, twitching, breaking, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. You are not surviving the famine. You are participating in it. At some point, fear turns into numbers, not the kind you write down, but the kind you feel pressing against your ribs every time you breathe. You begin to measure everything. Not in hope, but in cost. How long can a handful of grain last? How many days before your strength fails? How many people in this village can survive before the rest must disappear? Because that's when it becomes clear. There isn't enough, not for everyone. The markets no longer function. They fracture. Prices don't rise logically. They explode. A sack of wheat becomes unattainable, then meaningless, because no one is willing to sell what keeps them alive. Coins lose their power. Wealth becomes irrelevant. You could own land, titles, even weapons, and still starve beside a peasant who happens to be hiding a crust of moldy bread. You start noticing things you didn't before. Horses, once symbols of status, are gone. Slaughtered, eaten, stripped down to bone. Dogs vanish next. Then rats. Then anything that moves. The hierarchy of life collapses into one simple rule. If it can be consumed, it will be. And then, people begin to look at each other differently. Not openly, not yet. But it's there. In the silence. In the way conversations stop when someone weak enters the room. In the way eyes linger just a second too long. You feel it too. And that realization terrifies you more than the hunger. Because the calculation has changed. It's no longer, how do I survive? It's who survives instead of me. And the answer is not based on kindness, or morality, or faith. It's based on resources, timing, ruthlessness. This is no longer a famine. This is selection. And somewhere deep inside, a thought begins to form. Quiet, unwanted, but impossible to erase. If survival is limited, then someone else has to lose. You adjust, because you have to. The human body is remarkable like that. It bends before it breaks. You begin to slow your movements, conserving energy with every step. You sleep longer, not out of rest, but to escape the constant ache gnawing at your insides. You learn to ignore hunger, to treat it like background noise rather than a warning. And strangely, it works for a while. You find substitutes. Bark stripped from trees, ground into something barely edible. Grass boiled into bitter liquid. Old leather soaked and chewed until it softens enough to swallow. Each day you manage to survive feels like proof that you've adapted. That you've found a way others haven't. You start believing again. Believing that endurance is enough. That if you just hold on a little longer, something will change. The rain will stop. The land will recover. The nightmare will pass. But your body is keeping a different record. Your muscles begin to fade, quietly at first. Your hands shake when you try to grip even the simplest tools. Standing becomes an effort. Walking becomes a calculation. Every movement costs more than it used to, and your reserves are nearly gone. And then comes the moment you can't ignore. You try to stand and fail. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just a slow, undeniable collapse. Your legs no longer respond the way they should. Your strength isn't just reduced, it's disappearing. Around you, the same pattern unfolds. People who seemed stable yesterday are suddenly gone today. Not because they made a mistake, but because their bodies reached a limit no strategy could prevent. That's when the illusion breaks. You didn't adapt. You delayed. Every choice you made, every trick you used, every substitute you found, it didn't save you. It only stretched the timeline. And now, time is running out. Because the famine doesn't kill quickly. It waits. It watches. And then, when you're weakest, it finishes what it started. The rain eventually stops, but nothing returns to normal. You expect relief when the sky clears, when the ground begins to dry, when the first fragile signs of life push through the ruined soil. But the truth is harder to accept. The famine doesn't end when the weather changes. It lingers inside bodies already broken. You feel it every time you try to move. Your strength doesn't come back. Your hunger doesn't fade. It reshapes you. Your bones press against your skin, your thoughts slow, your reactions dull. Even when food becomes available again, your body struggles to use it. It's as if something fundamental has been lost, and you are not alone. The entire village has changed. The children are the most obvious, smaller, weaker, their growth interrupted by months of deprivation. Their eyes carry something older than they should, a quiet understanding that survival came at a cost they can't yet name. But the adults, they're worse in a different way. You see it in how quickly illness spreads now. A simple fever that once passed in days now lingers, deepens, takes hold. Wounds don't heal properly. Coughs become death sentences. The body no longer fights. It surrenders. Something has shifted beneath the surface. What the famine didn't kill, it weakened. And that weakness doesn't disappear. It waits. It compounds. It passes silently from one moment to the next, from one season to the next, building towards something no one can yet see. You try to convince yourself the worst is over, but history doesn't work that way, because what you've survived isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of something far worse. A generation now walks forward carrying invisible damage, bodies less capable, immune systems fractured, resilience stripped down to its bare minimum. They are alive, but only just. And when the next crisis arrives, they won't be ready. Survival sounds like victory, but here, it doesn't feel like one. You made it through the famine. You endured the hunger, the sickness, the slow collapse of everything around you. You are still standing when so many others are not. By every definition, you survived. And yet, something inside you knows the truth is more complicated, because it wasn't the strongest who lived. You saw strong bodies fail, muscles wasted down to nothing, strength turning useless against an invisible enemy. It wasn't the smartest either. Those who planned, rationed, calculated still fell victim to poisoned grain and failing flesh. So what decided it? The answer is unsettling. It was timing, position. Small, almost invisible choices that didn't feel important in the moment, but changed everything. A piece of bread you hesitated to eat. A place you chose not to enter. A person you stayed away from without knowing why. Survival wasn't earned. It was navigated. Through uncertainty, through fear, through a world where the rules no longer made sense. And that realization stays with you, because if survival isn't about strength, then what does that say about the world you thought you understood? The people who lived through 1315 didn't leave as heroes. They left as witnesses. Witnesses to how quickly order collapses, how fragile systems really are, and how thin the line is between stability and chaos. You look back, and one truth refuses to fade. The famine didn't just test humanity, it revealed it. And maybe that's the part that lingers longest. Because if it happened once, it can happen again. If this story made you question what survival really means, leave a comment and tell me. What choice do you think would have saved you? If you felt the weight of this journey, take a moment to like the video, subscribe for more immersive historical stories, and share it with someone who should experience this too. Thank you for staying until the end and walking through this world with me. I wish you strength, no matter what storms you face.